Değerli konuklarımız, ülkemizin değerli mimarları, iç mimarları, tasarım meraklıları, akademisyenleri ve basın mensupları. Hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Hem ülkemiz hem de tasarım dünyası için önemli bir akşamda sizlerle bir araya gelmekten mutluluk duyuyoruz. Bu özel gecede Asya'nın lider boya markası Nippon Paint'in Türkiye'ye gelişinin ilk yılını yeniliklerle kutluyoruz. Bu gecenin sizler için ilham verici ve besleyici olmasını istedik ve 2 saatlik dolu dolu bir program hazırladık. Nippon Paint markasının global vizyonunu dinleyecek ve Türkiye yolculuğunu daha yakından öğreneceğiz. Ayrıca Nippon Paint'in 13 yıldır sürdürdüğü ve alanında Asya'nın en önemli yarışmalarından birisi olan Asia Young Designer Award yani AYDA hakkında bilgi alacağız. Bu sene Nippon Paint'in tasarım destekleme platformlarından AYDA'nın Türkiye ayağı da başlıyor çünkü. Artık Türkiye'den öğrenciler de sürece dahil olup hayallerine bir adım daha yaklaşma fırsatını bulabilecek. Ayrıca bu akşam sizleri tasarım dünyasından insan ve doğa odaklı işleriyle öne çıkan çok değerli 3 isimle bir araya getiriyoruz. Plastique Fantastique'ten inin, Marco Canevacci ve SLA'den Rasmus Astrup'un sunumlarını Türkiye'de ilk kez bu gece burada birlikte dinleyeceğiz. Akışa geçmeden önce yapmak istediğim bir iki küçük hatırlatma var size. Yayınımız global konuklarımız da olduğu için 2 dilde gerçekleşecek. Türkçe izlemek için yayın ekranının altındaki Türkçe butonuna, İngilizce izlemek için yine yayın ekranının altındaki İngilizce butonuna basabilirsiniz. Eğer tercüme olmadan izlemek isterseniz orijinal yayın seçeneğinden de takip edebilirsiniz. Son olarak da yayın boyunca değerli görüşlerinizi ve sorularınızı ekranın yanındaki panel bölümünden bize iletirseniz çok memnun olacağız. Evet, değerli konuklar, Nippon Paint'i daha iyi tanımak, dünya devi olarak Türkiye pazarında yaratacağı farkı ve AYDA'yı dinlemek için Nippon Paint, Betek Boya Pazarlamadan Sorumlu Genel Müdür Yardımcısı Arzu Uludağ Elazığ'ı sahneye davet ediyorum. Hoş geldiniz.
Merhaba.
Sahne sizin.
Teşekkür ediyorum. Herkese merhaba, herkese iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Ülkemizin değerli mimarları, iç mimarları, basın mensupları, akademisyenler, tasarım meraklıları, çok sevgili öğrenciler ve çok değerli AYDA jürimiz, iç mimarlık ve mimarlık jürimiz. Hepinize hoş geldiniz diyorum. Bugün bizim için çok önemli bir gün. Dünyanın lider boya markalarından Nippon Paint'in Türkiye'ye gelişinin ilk yılını sizlerle birlikte kutluyoruz. Gönül isterdi ki hep birlikte olalım, yüz yüze olalım, göz göze olalım, aynı salonda bu kutlamayı yapalım. Ama galiba pandeminin uzamasıyla birlikte hepimiz alıştık bu gibi dijital platformlara. Burada da keyfini sonuna kadar çıkaracağımıza eminim. Özgün tasarımcıların destekleyici gücü mottosuyla yola çıkan markamızla mimarların, iç mimarların, tasarımcıların ve yaşam alanlarına özel bir dokunuş katmak isteyenlerin çözüm ortağı olmak için yola çıktık. 1881'de kurulan bugün tam 140 yıllık tecrübesiyle 4 kıtada 27 ülkede 25.000 çalışanı ve 150'den fazla şirketiyle faaliyet gösteren Nippon Paint'in teknolojik gücü ve inovatif yaklaşımıyla insanı odağına alarak geliştirdiği ürünlerini sizlerle buluşturmaktan büyük mutluluk duyuyoruz. Mimarlara, iç mimarlara, tasarımcılara ve tasarımı hayatının önemli bir yerine koyan herkese Nippon Paint ile hayallerindeki projelerini gerçekleştirme yolunda destekleyici güç, kanatları altındaki rüzgar olmak istiyoruz. Asya'nın en büyük boya markası olan ve teknolojisiyle boya sektörüne yön veren, bir renkten çok daha fazlasını sunan, mekanınıza dokular katacak, teknolojisiyle hayatını siz fark etmeden kolaylaştıracak. Yeni markamızla iç ve dış cephe boyaları, efektli boyalar, ahşap uzmanlık serisi, fonksiyonel ürünler ve sağlık kategorisinde ürünler sunuyoruz. Hepsiyle de çok büyük gurur duyuyoruz. Ama en büyük gurur duyduğumuz ürünlerimizden bir tanesi ülkemizin ilk ve tek Green Guard Gold sertifikasına sahip, içinde uçucu organik bileşen içermeyen, VOC free, çevre ve insan sağlığına tam duyarlı boyalar ve onları da sizlerle buluşturmaktan altını çizerek bahsetmek istiyorum. Sizleri bu buluşmadan sonra ürünlerimizi, markamızı, marka hikayemizi daha yakından tanımak için öncelikle sosyal medyalarımıza, web sitelerimize ve tabii ki çok farklı bir deneyim yaşayacağınıza inandığımız teşhir ve satış noktalarımıza davet etmek istiyorum. Bugün kısaca markamızın şöyle bir hissiyatını almak için bir filmimiz var. Onu hep birlikte izleyelim istiyorum.
Bir evi tasarlarken önce bir insan çizerim kağıda. Sonra onun hayatta nelerden zevk aldığını, hangi müzikleri dinlediğini, hangi filmleri izlediğini düşünürüm. Yeni cevaplar, yeni tasarımlar doğurur. Bazen duvardaki yeni bir doku, farklı bir boya, mekanda bambaşka bir etki yaratır. Alışıldık sorulara, alışılmadık cevaplar verir. Nippon Paint, evinize harikalar katar.
Evet, kısaca bir his verebildiğimizi düşünüyorum. Tabii biz Nippon Paint'te teknolojimiz ve inovasyon DNA'mızla olduğu kadar insan odaklı olmakta da çok büyük gurur duyuyoruz. Faaliyet gösterdiğimiz bütün ülkelerde, bütün coğrafyalarda doğrudan ya da dolaylı olarak daima topluma katkı projeleri gerçekleştirmek en önemli amaçlarımızdan bir tanesi. Markamızın topluma katkı projelerinin başında bugün de sizlerle paylaşacağımız Asya'nın en önemli tasarım destekleme platformlarından Asia Young Designer Awards, yani biz Türkçe şöyle söyleyelim, AYDA geliyor. Nippon Paint Uzak Doğu'da tam 13 yıldır kesintisiz olarak düzenlediği Asia Young Designer Awards bu yıl ilk defa Türkiye'nin de katılımıyla eş zamanlı olarak 16 ülkede düzenleniyor. 13 yılda 35 bin üzerinde öğrencinin katıldığı ve geleceğin tasarımcılarını yetiştirme vizyonuyla gerçekleştirilen bu organizasyonun Türkiye'nin yetenekli tasarımcılarına uluslararası bir dünyanın kapılarını açacağına da inancımız tam. Mimarlık ve iç mimarlık bölümlerindeki öğrencileri kabul ettiğimiz AYDA'da her bir kategorinin ulusal kazananı oluyor. Bu ulusal kazanan ülkesini temsil etmek için global tasarım platformuna, yarışma platformuna gidiyor. Kazandığı bu değeri eğer yeterince kullanırsa global yarışma kazananı oluyor ve inşallah Türkiye'den bir arkadaşımız Asia Young Designer of the Year unvanıyla Harvard University Graduate School of Design'da, ismi bile güzel, 6 haftalık Design Discovery programına katılma şansını yakalıyor. Mimarlık ve iç mimarlık olmak üzere bu yarışma 2 ayrı kategoride düzenleniyor. Biz Türkiye olarak bu yıl ilk yılımızda her 2 kategoriden de öğrenci başvurularını kabul ediyoruz. Yarışmamızın bu yılki teması empati için tasarla. Asia Young Designer Awards'un başvuruları web sitemizde başladı. Size yarışma ile ilgili kısa bir filmimizle daha fazla bilgi vermek istiyorum. Evet, bu çok heyecan verici projenin, yarışmanın detaylarını hem bizim ulusal web sitelerimizden hem de global web sitemizden takip edebilirsiniz. Detayları öğrenebilirsiniz, hesaplarımızdan gelişmeleri takip edebilirsiniz. Yalnız hepinizden en önemli ricamız bu yarışmaya daha çok öğrencinin Türkiye'den katılması için hepimizin bunun avukatı olması ve etrafında buna dahil olmasını öngördüğü öğrencilerin girmesi için onları cesaretlendirmesi. Bazen arkadaşlarımızın buna ihtiyacı oluyor. Ne kadar çok öğrenciyi haberdar edersek, ne kadar çok öğrencimiz Türkiye finaline girerse o kadar Türkiye'yi temsil edecek projeyi en güzel şekilde birlikte seçeriz jürimizle ve inanıyoruz ki Türkiye'den arkadaşlarımız uluslararası dünyanın kapılarını açmakla ilgili adımlar atarlar. AYDA ile ilgili bilgilerin sonunda ben bu projede proje ortağımız olarak çalışan Arkitera'ya özellikle çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Onun yanında birazdan daha detaylı tanıyacağımız çok değerli iç mimarlık ve mimarlık kategorisindeki jüri üyelerimize şimdiden bize ayırdıkları zaman için, ayırdıkları akıl için, ayırdıkları deneyimleri için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Çok minnettarız kendilerine. Efendim bu gecenin onuruna biz 2 tane de önemli konuşmacımızı davet ettik. Tek başına benim konuşmam sizleri tatmin etmeyecek diye düşünüyoruz. Bu yüzden ben de çok merakla bekliyorum bu ilham veren konuşmaları. Şimdiden sevgili Plastique Fantastique ve SLA'den dostlarımıza aramızda oldukları için, özellikle soru cevap bölümünde bizi daha da aydınlatacakları için çok çok teşekkür ediyorum. Konuşmamız sonunda size keyifli bir dinleme dilerken hem Nippon Paint ile ilgili vizyonumuzu paylaşması hem de sizlere iyi dileklerini iletmesi için Yönetim Kurulu Başkanımız Mr. Yav'ı sizlerle buluşturmak istiyorum. Şimdilik iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Görüşmek üzere.
Merhaba Türkiye. Good day to honorable members of Turkish architectural community and esteemed AYDA Turkey jury. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to each and every one of you for taking the time to join us this evening to celebrate 2 special milestones. Today marks the first year in which Nippon Paint has set foot in Turkey, and we aim to accomplish many more great things together here with you. Indeed, I'm honored to be among all of you, especially well-regarded architectural community, to introduce Nippon Paint to professionals and consumers alike. As you all know, Nippon Paint is one of the world's leading paint and coatings company in terms of innovations, technology, and solutions. As we continue our journey in this market, we are glad to have representatives from the Turkish community together with us to roll out 2 significant milestones and initiatives: our innovative product line, as well as a flagship CSR initiative. At Nippon Paint, we deeply believe in innovation, actively listening and engaging with our customers and consumers, and pushing ourselves beyond our limits to deliver the best solutions that cater to every need. Our company strongly stands by its value that amplifies excellence and growth for our people and value creation for our customers and shareholders. We are the brand that is value-driven and want what's best for our people. Additionally, we place high emphasis in our partnership with the design community, which we seek to continue support and nurture, always leveraging on our 3 core value pillars that are innovate, inspire, and care. We have expanded to many geographical locations over the years, and we are still expanding to date. We are ecstatic to now have a presence in Turkey as it plays a big role to our growth regionally and globally. Turkey is a country that is rich in heritage and architecture, and we hope we'll be able to contribute our innovations to this country, which would add an immense value to our brand. We are beyond delighted to have this opportunity to invest in Turkey, and we are committed to take this partnership to even greater heights. On another note, let's not forget the future of design, which are the young talents and designers of this country. We are pleased to bring the Asia Young Designer Awards, or known as AYDA, which Nippon Paint has organized for the past 13 years in over 15 countries. AYDA is a platform that nurtures the design talent within the architecture and interior design community and has added immense value to the design community worldwide. It is a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be a part of the AYDA family, and the winners will also stand a chance for an all-expense-paid trip to Design Discovery Program at the Harvard Graduate School of Design in Boston, USA for 6 weeks. Nothing gives me greater pride than this moment as we open the AYDA platform to young Turkish architecture and interior design students to give them an opportunity to showcase and present their innovative ideas to the world. The leading journey is invaluable, not just within the regional young design talents, but also from the experienced industry practitioners from all over Asia. I hope both partnerships we are rolling out today would continue to strengthen our bond in the coming years. Once again, I'm grateful to have had this opportunity to speak with all of you. Hopefully, soon enough, I'll get a chance to be in Turkey to meet and greet all of you personally. Meanwhile, stay safe and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Mr. Yao ve Arzu Hanım'a bir güzel konuşmaları için çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Evet sevgili konuklar, AYDA'nın Türkiye ayağı için Nippon Paint titiz bir süreç izliyor. Ve bu sürecin en önemli parçalarından biri de şüphesiz ki çok değerli jürimiz. Şimdi dilerseniz jürimizi hep birlikte daha yakından tanıyalım. Evet, jürimizi de tanıdıktan sonra şimdi hepimize ilham verecek olan ilk konuşmacılarımız Plastique Fantastique'in ortakları mimar Yina Yang ve Marco Canavacci'yi dinleyeceğiz. Yang ve Canavacci'nin ortaklığında başarılı işlere imza atan Plastique Fantastique, mekandan bağımsız, düşük enerji sarfiyatlı, nefes alan, geçici şişme strüktürler kuran performatif bir sanat grubu. Çalışmaları kamusal alanı etkinleştirme, paylaşma ve halkı yaratıcı süreçlere dahil etmek üzerine. Çalışmaları şimdiye kadar Venedik Bienali başta olmak üzere önemli sanat ve müzik festivalleriyle Berlin, Roma, Kopenhag, St. Petersburg, Canberra gibi kentlerde sergilendi. Sözü bu yaratıcı ekibe bırakmadan önce başta da yaptığım hatırlatmayı tekrar yapmak istiyorum. Belki sonradan katılan izleyicilerimiz vardır diye. Konuşmaları Türkçe dinlemek isterseniz Türkçe butonundan, İngilizce butonundan, tercümesiz orijinal yayın butonundan takip edebilirsiniz. Sunum boyunca da lütfen bizimle değerli görüşlerinizi ve sorularınızı panelden paylaşın. Çünkü sunumdan sonra soru cevap kısmımız olacaktır. Evet, yüksek müsaadenizle sözü kendilerine bırakıyorum.
Many thanks for the introduction. As you said, my name is Marco Canavacci.
My name is Yana Yang.
We are both director of Plastique Fantastique, which is a collective for temporary art based in Berlin. And I keep this occasion to congratulate with Nippon Paint for its coming in Turkey. And
Nippon Paint is supporting young students, and they launched a competition called Asia Young Designer Awards. And we think that this will be a great opportunity for students in Turkey.
And it's also a great opportunity for us to share with you our experience that we had during the past 20 years. To start to tell you our story, we will tell you a story, which is a story that starts exactly at the beginnings of the 90s, when I came to Berlin, coming from Rome, and I found a universe which were something very new to me. I came from Rome, that was a very organized city, and arrived in Berlin, where you had a city full of empty spaces. Besides that, you have to imagine that the East German state collapsed and the West German state needed many years to control it. During those years, we had the city as a place to experiment. We had the city as a playground for us, especially in the center part of Berlin, Berlin Mitte. There were many squares, unofficial, that were open to the imagination. And people started to play with these spaces by improvising lots of kind of activities. And I was very fascinated about that during my studies of architecture at the Technical University of Berlin, to see how realities could keep going either for one day, maybe 1 year, and you never knew in advance how long they would take place. So the city was the kind of collage where many things were intervening and overlapping itself and giving the chance to think about how our society can develop in this state of anarchy. After finishing my study, I wanted also to be part of this cultural situation in the city. So together with some friends, we rented an empty factory hall next to the river. And first we had to clean it, to put something to close the windows, to build a bar, but still we needed something essential. This factory hall was 2,000 square meters big and it was very cold in Berlin. So the idea was to make bubbles. First, to have a shield for the cold weather. The wool space became a techno club, and the bubbles were the lounge, where to stay in a warm space and to relax a bit, while outside the bubbles you can dance. You could dance and dance. So our background was the Berlin underground. And after experiencing that for a couple of years, actually for 2 years, we decided to move out to see what happens if those experiments that we are doing in the closed space goes in public space in the city. At the same time, we had for the first time the possibility to travel around Europe for very little budget. So actually we could spend 20 euros, have 20 kilograms and a ventilator with us. 2 people moving, and this was the beginning of Plastique Fantastique, trying to approach our sensitivity with the surroundings all over Europe.
And that's how we started our journey. And we have thought about what's the character or personality of the installation that we are doing. And first thing is that it's very playful. So we extended our location to Russia, which supposed to happen this year or last year, and canceled due to coronavirus. It was the project for New Holland Island in St. Petersburg for new garage museum in New Holland Island there. And we designed a big pond. St. Petersburg is quite famous or popular or well known for its chess player and chess playground. And we were thinking a small pond could be a big matter. So small thing can do a big, very important role in society or in life in general. And this big pond is so high and big that you could see everywhere in the city. And when you enter the structure, it is, from outside it looks very monumental, but inside it can be very cozy, intimate space.
So this was the first project that has been cancelled in this here that we had behind us. We wanted to create something monumental, which is also very cozy. Something like that we did it many years before in Berlin, not on the same scale, but also playing within being monumental, being golden in a very poor neighborhood, to show that everybody has the possibility to think about himself and the surrounding in a different way, just to stimulate a new approach to the surrounding. This project was called the Ring Deluxe, and has been placed the first time in 2011 during the Berlin Festival, 48 hours in the Köln. And 3 years ago, we had the possibilities to have it again in the city of Logroño, in La Rioja, in Spain, where we attach the same installation, which is more a sculpture, of the building of the ancient city hall. And it's a way to be playful and monumental at the same time.
So playful, we sometimes play with just popping up the scale. And this one was the tapeworm that we did in MMK, Modern Art Museum in Frankfurt. So the tapeworm started from the legend of Maria Callas, who is an opera singer who swallowed a tapeworm to become skinny. And in fact, she became skinny. And we designed this huge tapeworm going through the whole museum, going up and down, and you can be eaten by the tapeworm from his mouth or from his ass. And inside the worm, there were some artworks like Kellogg Box from Andy Warhol or Joseph Beuys' projection.
So the worm changed its shape by becoming very big, and we relate to this, to the consciousness of our size. And we make a sculpture going through the space, and both is changing, the worm, the sculpture, and the museum itself. Something similar we did also during another festival in Berlin in 2008, which was called the Karl Marx Bonsai, and it's also a game of scale. You imagine a tree on the street, and this tree suddenly becomes a little bonsai, and the flower pot around is full of earth, in this case of human. And this image really shows the very simple relationship we have between inside and outside, between what is public space and what is private space. Our goal is actually to break this border, and in order to do this, we create a new artificial border that is only 0.2 millimeters. By doing that, people start to play between in and out, and you create a higher communication level between the two universes. It was also the first time we started to work with the sound, and those little speakers are called sound enhancer. And together with Lorenzo Brusci, for the first time, we thought that by applying them on our structures, we transform the structure in a big sound speaker. And people start to hear and touch it at the same time. And by doing that, people touch themselves and have a chance to know each other.
So there's another personality of the bubble is called friction, that it's rubbing itself to the existing environment, so creating physical friction, and at the same time creating emotional friction that is a temporary popping up in the corner of the city, that it's creating friction in your memory or in your mind.
This was a situation where we've been invited by a festival in Copenhagen, which is called the Metropolis Festival. It was 2013, and the curator of the festival, Trevor Davis, wanted to have a structure that is moving through the city, and asked us to create a new path through the city. And it was funny that he asked us to do this because we are not based in Copenhagen, so we don't know it very well. But by doing that, maybe we have another point of view about what could be an interesting situation. The bubble itself is a tool to operate it. And we had 13 different locations where we had to move during 1 month. Every single day is in a different spot. The bubble was made out of a transparent and a mirror top that we could change according to the weather conditions. And inside you have always had the situation created in cooperation with local institutions. In this case, in the right square, we had some martial arts and boxing interchange. We had spaces for kids. We had concerts inside, and even a place where to rest while biking the bicycle. Oh, and the idea was always that we wanted to touch with our bubble the surroundings. In this case, we were squeezing between two climbing walls and talking about astrology, or working with all these industrial structures, having talks, of course, or even being inside a church where suddenly there is this double level of mythology. And at the end, we always work on the same theme, to create this bubble that is creating a border, but also connecting different worlds between inside and outside, and playing itself also in situations where it would be difficult to find this kind of approach, like in front of a supermarket, where you have those constellations that mostly are spread around. And this is also the classic image between the communication that can happen because you have those borders which are breaking and melting within themselves.
So that's actually the dilemma or irony that we are constantly deal with or playing with, or this contradiction. This project was in Helsinki, Design Week in Helsinki, that was existing only because there was this statue that we wrapped around. The location was in the very center of Helsinki. That tram and bus and people are crossing, intersecting each other, and there's a huge department store in front. So the concept was that the art or design is coming to you, not you are intentionally searching for going to museum. And this statue had a special meaning for Finnish people, that it was representing the hard labor that they did after the financial crisis, after the war. And we wanted to give homage to this hardworking three blacksmiths, to lift them up and lighten it up.
Another case of our identity or no identity is the softness we work with. Bubbles are mostly very light and soft, and in this experience we wanted to check how light can a bubble be. For our art project in Berlin, we wanted to experiment if the bubble itself can hold its own weight, and indeed we squeeze it between a courtyard, and the bubble was just floating over the floor. This was a project that we did together with Markus Wüste, which is a sculptor that is working with stones. So we had this contradiction between heavy stone and the light air. And once you go up on the building, you realize that the volume that is inflated and surrounding yourself has a quite big dimensions. And once you enter with your head inside the installation, you see the lightness of the surrounding.
The soft and the light is the similar personality of the bubble, that physically when you touch the bubble, you can feel the air pressure very soft, and the air is very light, but it's also meaning our architectural approach to the existing environment, that it is just touching the environment very soft, and when it's gone, it doesn't leave any trace. And we anchor it with the sandbags, that we don't need to nail the ground or anything. So it just basically just disappear like a soap bubble after the show is over.
Multi-sensual installations. At the beginning, we always try to work more from an architectonical point of view. After a while, you realize that everything you do can be much more enhanced if you start to work in cooperation with other artists, or also if you expand your knowledge in other directions. Sound of Light was a sound and light sculpture that has been done in cooperation with Marco Barotti, another artist living in Berlin. Once we have been invited to participate to a light festival in West Germany. And we were not really able to think in this direction at the beginning because we never been doing any light art. So we thought to have something very simple running, like a camera filming the sky the whole time, and on the video that you have the sky, you apply one of those 6 basic colors. So the video is always different because of the color and gives you different output that is going to be interpreted by another software and give you sound, the sound of the light that is running at the right moment. And we had this installation in a former music pavilion in the city of Hamm that was looking like that. And the installation itself was squeezed in between those columns and leaving no light inside, except that from those columns coming from the interior of the installation, representing those colors. RGB for video and CMYK for print. At the end of those pillars, you always have a subwoofer that is changing regarding the exterior light, and you can feel the sound and the light by touching it and by having your walk through the installation in order to create your personal concert.
This is a cooperating volume. We did a lot of cooperation with Marco Barotti, the media artist based in Berlin. And this one was as if the volume has a life spreading in and out and creating the sound. And the visitors can squeeze themselves through the passage, bumping to each other in between. So it was an installation in Prague, in Czech, but we moved this same installation to Seoul last year. The whole concept of the exhibition was mindfulness, and this was fitting with the meditation, how you prepare yourself with the breathing when you start the meditation.
And how you try to compress your thoughts with the ones of the others, which is also a social issue. And the social issues are also part of this next chapter. And I go back to 2015, where you had a very strong migration toward the island of Lampedusa on the south of Italy. And before the big crisis started, I was invited to create an installation for a festival in Berlin. And I wanted to deal with the theme of the immigration, by using the Odyssey of Homer as a starting point. In the Odyssey of Homer, you have the chapter number 5, where Odysseus lost his last boat, all his friends, and he has to swim day and night to reach the shore and save his life. This kind of mythology is something that influenced very much our Western culture. And still we consider the immigrants reaching our shores as something completely different. And I wanted to have this poetry as a statement. So inside this boat that was landing on the airport of Tempelhof, you had the chapter number 5 of the Odyssey in 12 different languages running at the same time. Once you enter the installation, you have the chance to understand the language you prefer and to listen to the story.
I am going to send you away of my own free will. I will also give you clothes. And let me make you immortal.
Chant 5. L'aurore sort du lit du vieux titan pour annoncer aux dieux et aux mortels le retour de la lumière. Hermès, dieu des voyageurs, est chargé par Zeus et Athéna de convaincre Calypso de laisser partir Ulysse. Elle le retient d'un amour qui vient de lui offrir l'immortalité en plus du plaisir sensuel, mais laisse à présent insensible.
Και τις καλές πραγμάτιες να αποκτήσεις.
Sa femme et son fils Calypso reconnaît Hermès. Les dieux se prennent
Και εκεί στο λαϊκό το ταπεινό κρεβάτι. Από κάτω βρίσκονταν
So by this slideshow, we were not actually pushing any political opinion, but somehow giving people to think, giving the idea or platform to think about. And the Right Pill project was in a way similar project. We found this space blanket, emergency blanket material. And this material has a very interesting characteristic that when the light is outside, you don't see inside. But when the light is inside, you see through. And we thought that this kind of characteristic is somehow showing or telling the same thing, that we don't see ourselves inside, double layer. And this space blanket material has been the material for the Viele, the many, the movement, political movement in Berlin or in Germany to support.
It became a new flag to fight against racism and intolerance. So people used to use this space blanket during demonstration to fight against the AfD in Berlin, and it spread all over Germany. But as Jena said, of course, this way of changing the point of view is quite important, because I really cannot understand as many Italians can be so intolerant when, if they would know their own history, they would know that their own history is made of a lot of immigration. So you should be aware of that and be welcoming other people. We want now to show you two more projects that have been very important to us. And there are two very different projects that shows our way of working. The first one is done on an island, outdoor, in the forest, in a natural park, on the occasion of the Uro Festival in the island of Terschelling. The Uro Festival is a theater and performance festival that used the island as a stage. So you get invited to find out a place where you want to have your own show, your own performance. And on this occasion, the curator of the festival, his name is Kees Lesuy, joined together different actors, like a composer, Kate Moore, a choreographer company from Amsterdam, Lina Robana, musicians, the Stolz, and we as Plastique Fantastique, to merge those different backgrounds into one space to have this experiment, which was a performance. So we were looking for a spot in this forest in the middle of the island, and this was maybe the most suitable one because it was quite covered against the wind. But we had a couple of problems, like the G problem, of a tree in the middle of the stage, and some blackberries on the side and the oak on the other one. And the result was to make an installation that is working with those problems, which is taking them as a part of the space. The natural space and the artificial space, they have to work together. So we had the main stage, a transparent one on your right, a secondary stage which was milky on your left side, and the ring connected them. If you look at the installation from above, you will see that it's like a gradient that dissolves itself between a void and the forest. Once the installation starts, people are invited to enter the structure, and they have the freedom to move around it. So every corner can be the spot to have your personal point of view over the performance, which is called Loud Shadows Liquid Event. The tree becomes this connecting part between artificiality and naturality. The main stage, the transparent one, was this place of transparency where you could see and relate yourself with the nature around. The ring was a place which was part of the transaction, and the white one was more part of your subconscious, more intimate space, and you have to imagine that every installation, every performance changed because of the exterior situation. This is a case of a cloudy weather. If you summon it, you have a completely different landscape, in and outside. So that every performance is a different one, because if it is raining, the sound will be different. After the rain, you will have the birds being part of the performance. And there are many different actors that you cannot predict in advance. And this makes this work quite special. And this is a video that shows how is the performance, Loud Shadows Liquid Events.
Journeyers over consecutive seasons, over the years, the curious years, each emerging from that which proceeded in. Journeyers as with companions, namely their diverse phases, forth steppers from the latent unrealized baby days. Journeyers gainly with their own youth. with their bearded and well-grained manhood. Journeyers with their womanhood, ample unsurpassed content. Journeyers with their own sublime old age of manhood and womanhood. Old age, calm, expanded, brought with the haughty breath of the universe. Old age, flowing free with the delicious freedom of death.
In 2019, we were invited to participate Venice Art Biennale, invited by art director Stelios Kois, who is a Greek architect, who has a Kois Architects office. It was similar to Loud Shadow in the way that we were cooperating with other artists. In this case, we were cooperating with the sculptor,
Fabio Viale.
Fabio Viale, and the perfumer, and with the Stelios Kois. We create a blurry Venice, imagining the initial Venice before the city was built on swamp, on the fog, that there was no wall, nor ceiling, nor floor, imagining the imaginary landscape we were thinking and creating. So people could walk inside on water like Jesus without getting their feet wet. And we were initially thinking to somehow play with in and outside of the structure. In the end, management-wise, people couldn't go outside of the structure. And he was playing with the sunlight and water, and the visitors were completing the whole installation as a part of the installation. And here is the video of Blurry Venice.
So this was maybe one of the most exciting projects we've been doing. And they started at the beginning of 2019, and they stopped in November 2019. And at the end of it, we were really excited to face many different other upcoming projects. And then what happened afterwards is the story that we all know. It was somehow strange. terrific, and but give us also the chance to think a lot about what we are doing, what we are going to do next.
So we had a pause and think back what we have done and what we have to do and what we are going to do. But being an Asian living in Europe in the beginning of Corona time, especially I had a trouble walking in the public space. Once I was in the tram, sprayed by a stranger as if he wanted to disinfect me. And it was a little incident, but somehow since then I got a little bit afraid of being in public, and I had to think how I can go back to public space or to the street. And at the same time, on the news, doctors and nurses were lacking personal protective equipment. And we were thinking, you know what we are doing is actually perfect for this time, to protect yourself and the others. So this little bubble we create has overpressure, means that excessive air is constantly blowing in and excessive air is going out. So air is only flowing outside. So inside you are safe from the virus. It's the opposite concept of under pressure that you have in the hospitals. And since it has transparent layer, you can easily take care of people or patients outside. And if you want, you could create airlock system as well. And from here, from this medical somehow reason, we developed more performative or art project that started from the hypothesis that what if the situation is opposite, that switching, that not hashtag stay home, but hashtag stay out, because we know in the future the air inside in the house is contaminated, so you have to be outside. So in our story, government is giving you a bubble per a family, let's say, and you have to live in public space on the street. You can get electricity from the light pole, and the ventilator can be attached to the light pole that constantly blowing the air from above, which is fresh air. And to get out and go somewhere else, you have to wear this transparent sphere called eye sphere to keep the air safe. And in performance way, we were thinking in each bubble has a certain story about obsession that human has. It could be people watching Netflix all day, or you're ordering the packages and you're full of packages indoor inside your bubble. Or you can talk, make your political view or complain with the microphone, and then you can let the others hear your opinions. Or you can draw, or you can dance. Then somehow, we never know, you will learn to communicate and learn to live on the street.
It's a kind of parody that we wanted to make real in the street in order to observe ourselves and to understand how do we act with the other. What do we need to get in contact with other people, with our communities, with our society? Why are we so afraid to cover our space? What is if we have a transparent house we are living in? This performance will take place the next months, hopefully, in different cities. It is a work we have been dealing with the last month. And since everything was stopped, it should be our next upcoming project. Until the time, we share with you one of the most funniest experiences we had in this time, which was so tragic. And it was by developing this iSphere, which is part of the performance that Jena talked to you about, Stay Out. This iSphere were part of it, and the day the Berlin government decided that it was mandatory to cover your face on public transport, it was in April or May, we had this video that comes at the end, shared on our website, and we also shared the tutorial to make your own iSphere, which is very simple actually. We started to have different experiences with it, and we had a lot of feedback. And we were wondering about what does this time makes to us? How do you get isolated? How do you want to share even the air with the person who is next to you? To communicate with stranger people, how these kinds of situations becomes possible. And yeah, because of this, we are still here thinking how to proceed in the next stage and how to make our way of thinking space suitable with the upcoming time.
Sehr geehrte Fahrgäste, sehr geehrte Fahrgäste, gemeinsam gegen Corona, Corona, Corona. Abstand halten, Abstand halten, Abstand halten, Mund und Nase bedecken. Pflicht ab Montag. Pflicht ab Montag. Abstand halten. Corona, Corona, Corona.
Cut!
This is the end of our story. First of all, teşekkür, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Evet, Yina Yang ve Marco Canavaccia'ya bu ilham verici sunumları için çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve soru cevap bölümümüze geçiyoruz. Yina, Marco.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It was very inspiring. Our audience has a couple of questions for you, if you're ready.
Great.
Yeah,
Right.
ready? Okay. Here comes the first question. It's from Ahacan Bahadır, and it goes like this. While describing a design unit as a temporal object, how would you define the causality between attributes such as time, perception, materiality, etc., and the temporality of that unit? Is it possible to draw a line or define the threshold between permanent and temporal?
It's actually the blurry line or dilemma that we have to define our work between permanent and temporary. We play with these both subjects.
I also think that since personally for me it's very difficult to deal with the theme of permanent installation, we use this approach, this temporary approach, in order to focus on little steps in our life that can influence our perception of reality. So we try to reach our perception of illusion through our installations, and because of this, maybe we can transform a more permanent
Temporary.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our second question then, shall we? How did you manage to balance the natural light to make it comfortable for the visitors?
Natural light? You mean the sunlight?
I guess so, yes.
Well, it depends about the material you use. If you use, for example, a translucent material, as we did in the installation we showed you before, Loud Shadows in the Woods, this material creates the light that you receive is very dissolved inside the structure. You may see the shadows of what you have around, but you never have the sunlight directly in your face. At the same time, if you use a transparent material, it is very, very important how you have the sun in your face and how the sun is also creating a very hot bubble you are living in.
Yeah.
And you should really take care of it because it gets too hot.
So either you find a location under the shadow, under the tree, or we find the reflective cover, let's say, to reflect the light.
Or we have an installation in winter, like now.
Yeah. Or, you know, like you do it in Germany, and you had one in Hamm, where I was actually born, and there is not that much sunlight, not all the time. It's pretty, you know, dreary and rainy most of the time. So, but thank you for the answer. So, our next question, yeah.
What is fun, what is interesting is when you work with the natural light with projections, because it's always better if you have a rear projection, since the light fits better on the structure if it is on the opposite side. So if you want to have a beautiful view of a video, you should put the projector outside and you see the best from inside, or the other way around if the public is outside.
Okay, that's very intriguing, actually. So our next question is, how many people do you work with? Could you talk a little bit about your working atmosphere? How long does it take the average production process of a job to take?
At the moment, it's only us due to Corona. But most of the time, we have a production team to cut and seal and sew the bubbles. Mm-hmm. And we have collaborators, Marco Barotti, a sound artist or media artist, or Marcos Juste, a sculptor.
We have a bigger team. It depends also about the specific project. But let's say that we can go till maximum 10, 15 people, depending about also the season. Most of the projects we are invited in are taking place in springtime or in autumn in Europe. So this is the peak of the season for us most of the time. And now, now it's a bit weird because, all the festivals have been canceled or postponed. And even for the upcoming season, that means the spring season in May, June, there is no clarity at all about what is going to happen. Yeah.
But you adapted quite well, I guess, because I've just seen, you know, the bubbles that you can put on your head. Are they quite comfortable? Are they more comfortable than masks, for example?
No, it depends. People look at you and maybe you don't feel so comfortable if the public are looking at you.
Yeah, you're looking like aliens, you know, just visiting from another planet. But you also created a bubble where doctors can examine patients safely. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you actually have quite adapted to the corona situation with your art, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we had so much time to think and imagine and create. Initially, we had to pause and think what we do again and how to help the current situation and so on. So that was a practical, let's say, solution that we proposed for the pandemic situation.
I also think that at the beginning of the pandemic was for us more creative than these last months. Mm-hmm. I have to confess we are also a bit exhausted, but this happened to many colleagues of ours.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about that, that the first wave that was a surge for creativity, but the second one was like, okay, we know this now, let's just get over it. So you're not alone, we're all living through that. We have another question from our audience. How do you think the architecture and art environment has changed after the pandemic? Do we see old crowds again, or is the number of isolated spaces increasing?
I think that you will need to have a lot of bubbles after the pandemic. And those bubbles should be made of ecological materials. And you have a very good chance if you ask us to do something for that, no?
Yeah, create your own environment could be.
I think we can rethink the way that we deal with each other, how we contact each other, how we touch each other, how we talk, and the way of our living. I mean, our sensitivity will be improved afterwards.
I mean, since the public space is not available at the moment, we have to find out how to either to make it more private but semi-public, or find a way to get back to the public space. We are working on it.
Yeah. Your bubbles might be a good idea. I like them. I'm a big fan of the bubbles. But do you think people will be hesitant to go? I mean, the question was about after the pandemic, but we are still in it right now. But do you gather that after it's all over, hopefully soon, that people might be hesitant to go to exhibitions, or do you think they will be super eager and there will be like an onslaught of people wanting that experience? Well, what do you think will happen?
I guess, I mean, if I can imagine, I think people will eager to go somewhere, going to exhibition, go shopping, meet friends, have a party. I mean, personally, I would.
I think we miss the physical touch.
Yeah.
We need to shake hands, give some kisses, embrace someone, and enjoy the worst. These values that we are
missing.
not having any since a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to predict what will happen, but I agree. Everyone is eager to get in contact again. We have a question from our jury, which goes like this. What happens to the material you use when the installation is over? Do you have possibility to reuse and use it for other purposes?
Yes, we reuse it as many as possible. We find a similar site-specific location and occasion to reuse our structure. And recently we have recycled our very old structure from Lost Shadow that we made a filament for a 3D printer. We cooperate with a Creamet. It's in Switzerland.
Publicity? Propaganda?
There's an institution in Switzerland. And we can 3D print anything with this filament. And we just got it yesterday, and we are looking forward to test it.
We have been looking for this kind of solution since a lot of time. And the idea to process our inflatable structures in something more solid and also more permanent is our next step.
Wonderful. Our last question for you is this, and I'm very curious about it myself. Do you have any plans for an installation in Turkey?
We want to come.
Yeah, you should. Do you have any plans, any concrete plans, any offers, anything, on the horizon that you could share with us?
Our project Stay Out, actually, I think is suitable for many occasions. It reflects the way that we interact with each other. How can we restart to talk with each other, to touch each other, how we present ourselves in front of the public? It deals with a topic of obsession, and this is we can apply this Stay Out project to many different cities, and we would like to cooperate with the local performers to do that. This would be the best start.
Would be a good way to reflect our current situation in our mind and thoughts, or your mind and thoughts, and showing in public. space in Turkey?
This is what we are working right now. Normally, we get invited. We have a beautiful site inspection. We know the place. We try to understand the sensibility of the space together with you. And we develop a project starting from this point. So first we have to meet. But since we cannot fly now, we have to wait a little bit.
Okay. We'll be waiting excitedly for you to come and hopefully to see your wonderful project here in Turkey as well. Thank you so much, Yina, Marco, for talking to me, for your presentation, for your lovely and inspiring work. And, you know, stay sane, stay creative, and all our love from Turkey to Berlin, I guess.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye. Tschüss. Macht's gut. Evet. Bu değerli sunumları için Yina Yang ve Marco Canivacci'ye gerçekten çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bu güzel soruları siz sorduğunuz için size çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Şahane cevaplar verdiler. Bize Türkiye'ye gelme sözü verdiler mi, vermediler mi? Çok emin olamadım ama umarım Türkiye'de de işlerini görme fırsatını ve deneyimleme fırsatını buluruz. Evet, şimdi de sırada yine bizlerde başka ufuklar açacak bir konuşmacımız var. Rasmus Astrup. İskandinavya'nın önde gelen peyzaj mimarlığı, kentsel tasarım ve mimarlık stüdyolarından biri olan SLA'nın ortağı ve proje direktörü. SLA, yenilikçi mimari, altyapı, doğa ve teknoloji kullanımıyla çeşitliliğe ilham veren, modern, sürdürülebilir kentsel alanlar yaratmada 20 yıldan fazla bir deneyime sahip. Doğa, SLA'de geliştirilen, çizilen ve düşünülen her şeyin odak noktası. Temel yaklaşımlarını tamamlayıcılık olarak tanımlayan SLA, insan eliyle yapılmış ve yapılmamış doğal çevrelerin birbirinden farklı olsalar da tamamlayıcı olmaları gerektiğine inanıyor. Yine sunum boyunca lütfen bize sorularınızı gönderin, görüşlerinizi iletin. Şimdi karşınızda Rasmus Astrup.
First of all, thank you for that kind introduction. And I would also like to start by saying that the Asia Young Designer Awards is an excellent opportunity for young people to get one step closer to their dreams and improve their education, but also to give them a voice to improve the rest of us, to improve the future generations. And I really would like to thank Nippon Paint, which I understand has been sponsoring this event, and also for them for presenting this program, which my understanding is that it has a legacy of 13 years globally, and now it's coming to Turkish university students. So thank you for that. And I'm going to give you an introduction to our projects, but also our approach to how we work and why we work like we do. So one of the first things that people recognize that we are working with in SLA is nature. And nature is very complex. Nature is very rich, and nature is very important for people. A lot of people look at nature like this. You look at the sky, you look at the crown of the trees, and you feel comfortable. But actually, a lot of nature is not visible to the eye. It's happening underground. And it shows the complexity and the awareness, but also the thing that can amaze you when you start to study nature. And we feel very amazed and inspired by it here in SLA. So this is an example of the roots you saw before on the drawing. It's a project where we were actually working with polluted soil, contaminated areas, and we use the power of nature the small fungus that grows on the roots of the plants to clean the soil. So to do that, we actually created a new landscape on top of this contaminated area. We added a new layer of nature, new nature. So people could actually start to use this area, feel safe and comfortable, but it was all planted on top of something else. And this is a general thing that is happening because we are creating things on top of something else here in the firm because it's often on top of buildings, it's on top of other elements like that. But I'm going to give you an introduction on how we approach it because it is what we call new nature. This is a picture I took last weekend. It's my son and my dog, and we are investigating again the roots. It's some trees, and they have been turned around by heavy wind, but they're still growing because the roots are so strong. So again, it represents the power of nature. It also represents, when you look at it, that it might look very chaotic when you see this picture, but there's no waste in this picture. It's not garbage. It's all nature. It all has a purpose, even though the tree was turned over by the wind. That is something we find very impressive. So we try to mimic that. We cannot make real nature. We make new nature. And here you see a project for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. It's the leading pharmaceutical company within diabetes medicine. It's called Novo Nordisk. And their international headquarters is based here in Denmark. And for that company, we actually kickstarted some of those processes you saw before. So this is a dead tree from their international headquarters because we saw it as a value, a brand value for a big international firm to kind of frame themselves in this new nature approach, to frame themselves in a statement about biodiversity, and to frame themselves in a statement about sustainability. You can see how they used to be. It's all gray in the surroundings. This is all how it was before. And then we came in. What you cannot see is that there's actually 400 cars parked under here. So it's also a new hierarchy for the business district, that we prioritize nature and human beings before cars. So the inspiration, as I said, comes from nature itself, the real nature. And in nature, a lot of things happens all the time. It's kind of chaotic, like you saw on the picture before with the dog, my dog and my son. And here you can see how small trees become bigger and bigger, and they die, and they generate soil for the next generation. But in reality, it's mega chaotic. Things get flooded, there are sometimes fires and stuff, but nature always gets back. It heals itself, unless we do this too drastic climate change influences. But besides from that, there has always been this kind of chaos, a beautiful chaos in nature. So all these dead trees has a value. So in this project, you can see how we have tried to imitate nature. We have planted small trees, big trees, because we are kickstarting this circuit. And within these new planted trees, there is also placed dead trees, because dead trees is important for biodiversity. You need them to support mosses, insects, and so on. So it's really important to give a client an insight of this complexity that we understand nature is. And it's also important for us to explain to the client that they need to celebrate it. So how can you do that? Well, you can do that by making them all these nice diagrams, show them the beautiful pictures, but you also have to do it in reality. So this is an example from this office where I'm sitting right now, where we actually planted the trees We had already been down to the nursery. We had hand selected all the trees, and then we knew how high they were, how big they were in the crown diameter. And then we made a model of all those trees, and we planted them in around the buildings, because we need to understand the experience, the aesthetical experience, the spatial experience. So on top of that biological layer, there is an aesthetical layer that we really care a lot about, and it's deeply embedded in our DNA in this office. So that is one thing. Then I mentioned before, you need to sell kind of that idea to the client. How can you do that? The client, to begin with, didn't ask for biodiversity, didn't ask for all the sustainable approaches we brought. They wanted to be sustainable, but they didn't know at what level and what prioritizations they had to make. So we said, well, maybe you should consider this nature park or this landscape as something else than just a park. Maybe it's actually part of your building. It's an outdoor space, because they used to pay a lot of expensive consultants to do these brainstorm rooms where people got in and you know, you put posters on the wall and everybody become mega creative. But in reality, I personally had my best ideas on my bike, in a morning run, or as soon as I leave this lecture, I'm going to remember something when I go outside that I wish I had said. Because when you go outside, you are more informal, you are more free. So it's important for your mind. So we actually said, well, that outdoor space for you is the most important. And for this company, it is important because there's such a competitive market, the biomedicine. So they really had to be competitive. And we said, well, the most important value, the key asset in your company is your employees. So consider that related to the park, and understand that some of the biggest thinkers in the world actually didn't have their ideas while they sat down. They walked, they talked to each other, they communicated. So for us, we brought that idea to the client and said, this is about nature, this is the new nature, but it's also something else. It's actually an innovation driver for you as a company. And this is something you can see globally now. We actually honestly did this project before Apple and Google started all these green campuses, but it is an old idea from, if you go to Asian hospitals, to like old hospitals, old universities, there's always been this link between the outdoor space and the indoor space. And this is something that we see globally now as something very important. So what is it again? To dive into it, the daily journey from A to B is this. Suddenly you can hear bird sounds. You can actually feel that you calm down. You can smell the pine trees. So this journey was a very important driver for our design. You can see here the topography is made. So we painted the paths on top of the topography. We even put trees in the middle of the path so you can walk with your iPhone without hitting the trees. You need to sense nature. You need to sense each other. And that is why it's so popular for walk and talks. So that's something that is important globally. We think that we can actually heal people and also heal cities. We need, and especially now, we've all been through a very hard pandemic and lockdown, and we are still in it, but we need healthy cities, and healthy cities bring healthy people. So this is another example of our approach and what we believe it brings of good to other people. It's a nurse from a hospital we did here in Copenhagen. She's on her way to do a surgery. I took this picture, and she's actually just crossing a regular parking lot. But while she do that, she's crossing a space that is giving her a feeling of nature. You can sense yourself when you walk there. You calm down, the temperature drops. You can feel the air is a little fresher. And I would rather have assistance from her in the surgery than I would have it from a nurse that just crossed a normal parking lot, where it's heated up from the black asphalt and the cars. So of course it contributes to her in that hospital. It also contributes to all the people that also work there, but importantly, it also contributes to the people that is there because they are ill. So the patients, of course, is a key here. And you can see from this picture that we kind of embrace the whole hospital with nature, both from the outside, but there's also internal courtyards where we really added as much nature as possible. And here you can see from inside one of the rooms, you can see that it's not done yet, but nature is there, and it's standing there, and it salutes you, and it's dynamic. You know, the light when you're in the hospital is the same. It's static. It's not healthy for you, but you can see outside. You can see how the sun reflects in the leaves. You can see the wind that moves them, and we believe that that is very healthy and supporting the people. They will heal faster when they are in the hospital. And then this little picture that I'm very proud of, it's one of my dear colleagues that 2 years ago gave birth on that hospital, and still had the power on her way there to send me this picture, because she knew how much I love the picture of the nurse. So also for our internal colleagues here, they also benefit from the nature at that hospital. I really love this picture. Anyway, we also do it to support students. This is a campus in Copenhagen where you can see the daily ride on the bicycles. Everybody's bicycling here, and especially students in Copenhagen. They also get a joy out of the city nature, as we call it. And it's surrounding them. It's bringing them comfortable outdoor spaces. It's bringing them places where they can think informally, because yes, it's very important that the guys that works at Novo Nordisk, they get a break, and they can think big thoughts and drive innovation, but it surely is equally important that the students gets it. So that is why we are also proud of this project. And another thing I would like to say about this project is that it's also an introduction to how we work, because this was a campus, but it was placed so centrally in Copenhagen. So we also had to ask ourselves a bigger question, similar to the previous project. You saw that it was a nature park for the employees, but suddenly it was also an outdoor space and innovation lab. You could say the same for this campus, because it works for the students, but it's also a location in the city where we need to make a larger generosity. And the generosity that was needed here was connectivity. So we needed this path you can see up here is actually supporting it's combining two very important connections in the heart of Copenhagen. So this thing about what is the bigger gesture, and here it is both to create a destination, but it's definitely also connections. So this thing that the campus is a gift to the surrounding adjacent communities, it's actually supporting and adapted into those areas and used by other than just students. Is really a joy to explore. And you can dive even further down. You can say that this bridge that you saw before is also kind of an element. It's like a big furniture in the project. There's benches on it. It's like a cool feature. Kids love to go there. So it's not just a bridge, it's something else. And we really always love to deal with things like that. As another example, here you see a bridge we did in Sweden, where we were just, a bridge means literally to solve an obstacle so you can cross from A to B. It's like the meaning of the word, but we said, no, again, let's make it into a furniture. So this is an example, again, how you can use your thinking to say, what is the bigger generosity here? And here it was to stand on the bridge in the middle of it, because it was actually a cool spot, great view, nice sun. So we turn it into something else than just passing, and it works. People are actually hanging out on the bridge. You can see here, because there's a very tall building next to it. And unfortunately, it brings a lot of shadow, but we discovered that on the bridge, there's a lot of sun. So it became the perfect spot to sit and relax. So this is just another example of the bigger generosity in a project. And of course, cost is something you need to consider. It's very easy to be generous if you have no budget limits, but there is always budget limits. So materials is a key here. That is often where the clients try to reduce costs, and because they have a budget, which is completely fair. So we take a lot of pride to really investigate materials and make smart solutions. This is me. It's some years ago with I thought at that time, very cool mustache, but this is not the point here. The point is that this element that I'm standing is the key element for the bridge. It's something from the industrial world, and you're using it to sort corn from big farm industries. So it was super cheap. So we just used that and then put it together and framed the whole bridge construction in that material. So it's kind of on terms of the material. The material was equally important as the design, the geometry itself, because when you put two of these materials in front of each other, it makes this mirror effect. It makes a new pattern from every angle, and it reflects the light. But all in all, it's cheap industrial areas. We just wanted to make it really raw, but play with the light again, so it became part of the design. And this is really something we do here. This is another example of materiality approach. This is glass. It came from an island it's called Bornholm, and they had a lot of leftover glass. And we said, let's turn that instead of it's garbage, let's turn it into a resource. So there we actually invented a new type of asphalt, where the glue you use in asphalt is called bitumen, and it's always black, but there is a transparent one, and we use that. So this is a new type of asphalt that both have a very unique light reflection, but it's also having a gradient of glass in the asphalt. So it's just an example. We even did, as you can see here, retaining walls and gravel path. So we took that material that was a waste and turned it into a very poetic resource, and it had a local meaning because there's a lot of glass artists on the island. So it's also dealing with the identity of that place, and this is something we really like to dive into. This is one of our latest materials that I also think represents our approach. It's soil, maybe the most cool material in the world, because soil is a key to success if we want to solve the crisis we are in right now in terms of both biodiversity and CO2. So soil is something we need to care about. And this is a project, the thing you see here that is lit up is a soil wall. It's currently just started the construction. So here we studied how to use soil as a building material. And of course, when you push the limit like that, there is constantly some requirements that is difficult, because it has to be a engineering, it has to be approved technically, insurance wise, and so on. But we don't give up. We keep fighting, and it's because there are so many colleagues here who believe in it. And this project was really driven by one of my dear colleagues called Sune, who's really, he's proud when I say he is a nerd. He's a very excellent designer, but he's also very excellent to understand complex materials and nature and use it in a new way. This is actually a test wall, and we are now getting a wall made out of pure soil in that project, which is very unique and inspiring for us. Another example of materials is this one. It's a project previously inaugurated, and here it's asphalt. This is a project that represents the power of nature, the forces within it, and you can see here that this is about water flow. It's about how topography and wind influence. So this is asphalt created by the circumstances and not actually designed. We didn't design this. It was created due to the circumstances of that exact location. Of course, we have designed the overall frame and topography, but we didn't detail all of these curves that you see in the picture, and we really love those processes. This is the plan of the project. You can see that it's something that is dynamic. It's something that brings a curiosity, and it represents how all these elements work together. And when you see it from above, this is under construction, was from a picture from when it was under construction. It's this ring of artificial landscape, but it represents all the feelings, the power that you can achieve from it. It's a celebration of that. And here you can see some insights from that. And it's still growing, becoming stronger, bigger, and more powerful by the day. So this was a short insight, and to explain how we can actually solve the projects like we want to do with all this knowledge behind them. It's important to state that we bring that to the client because we are an interdisciplinary firm. We have a lot of different skills in here. We have biologists, we have sociologists, anthropologists, and so on. So we are a mix of competences. We need that because the world is quite complex, and the level of quality we want to bring drives this need. Here you can see that we also would like to share our knowledge with others. We often write books and articles and stuff you can see here. So we want to both have like a political influence because that also matters a lot, and then sharing the knowledge. We also create a lot of effort or have spent a lot of effort to develop a system where we share the knowledge internally, because that is maybe the key to success for us as a firm. So this is me who printed some knowledge. I was going to a project a meeting with a client, and I needed some background info from other relevant projects on social interaction. So I printed these knowledge sharing. So every time we gain knowledge, we also care internally here in our office to make a contribution to share it with your colleagues. So when I was going to this client meeting, I could take the knowledge from this project, which is a big social affordable housing project in Copenhagen. This one from Aarhus, the second largest city in Denmark, where we really changed the whole identity for affordable housing, a challenged affordable housing district into something positive. And then I brought that to Detroit, where we are currently working with a project for around graduate 8 Mile district, which is it's called, where this city that went bankrupt. So obviously there is a lot of it's a different level of challenges, but it's still a lot of things to share in the level of knowledge. So we can bring some of our knowledge to Detroit, but we can definitely also bring so much knowledge from Detroit and back to Denmark. So in all levels, innovation or development or design is always driven by knowledge sharing. So this is something that we care about. Another example of knowledge sharing is this book. This is a book that took us 1 year. We work in the Middle East, and we have been working there for 5 years. And we have primarily focused on UAE. And in UAE, there is not so much literature, at least not that we could use, to give us the needed information about the local trees and the local plants. So we spent a year mapping all the local species. There's around 700 species, and produced this book, because we thought we could not really deliver a fulfilling design before we had that knowledge. So why did we do that? Well, because you need that in UAE if you want to design there. To be transparent here, I came with the consumption like a lot of people do, that is just an oasis. It's just something that is, if you've read this cartoon, in a second he jumps in the sand and the water disappears, right? So is this fake? What is it? It's built in the middle of desert. Well, it's not. There is a nature. This is a gaff tree. This is the national tree of UAE. It grows voluntarily in the desert. It likes to grow there. It's amazing. It has a root system that can expand 30 meters away from the ground. So it's really, really a tough tree. and they care about it. So of course that was our biggest inspiration. And then when we studied it more, we saw that there is actually a rich ecosystem. There is a biodiversity in UAE, and it needed to be celebrated because we couldn't find it anywhere. There are some things there, but it was not really present. There was a lot of imitations of what I would call almost Las Vegas landscapes, and not really having this proud, because there is a lack of pride of their own nature, and I think nature is very linked to culture. Another habitat that they have is this mangrove. There's a lot of mangrove in UAE, and especially in Abu Dhabi. Just the fact that if you go and stand inside that mangrove that you see here in the picture, that's 5 degrees lower than if you stand on top of the building. That's how clever nature is. So we need to consider this. We need to really bring in and solve the cities with these knowledges. And luckily, we had the chance to contribute with the knowledge from our book and from the effort we had made through the years with this park. It actually took, it actually now is called Al Fay Park, and it's has a meaning of shadow. It's referring to the shadow of the tree. So this is our site. This is how it looked 2 years ago when we went there for the first time. So you can see there wasn't really nothing there unless except the topography. This was a place where there was supposed to be a basement for a future building. So that's why the topography was not like it was. And we brought this concept to the client. We wanted to do something that felt like a forest. They don't have a forest in UAE. It's not like we have it here in the Nordic countries. They have more like monoculture. They have dense areas with trees in them, but it's not as rich in variation as here in the Nordic countries. But the feeling is the same. So we took that knowledge from our book. We said, okay, we need to mix what we know is there. We also need to respect that the palm tree needs to be there because it's culturally meaningful. But let's reduce the amount of palm trees because they drink a lot of water. Let's bring more of those gaff trees. They almost don't need any water. And then try to imitate the habitats, because then you can actually, over time, let nature take care of itself. So our whole approach for this was to imitate, again, nature as much as possible, respecting that this is artificial, it's city nature. But by doing that, we can really benefit from all the other things. We can, there is a lot of air pollution, there is dust, there's a lot of dust from the sand, you know, there it can cool down the climate. So all these benefits, which is called ecosystem services that is surrounding this plantation, is what we got out of it. So to do that, you can see here how we had to go to the desert. It's actually in the middle of the desert where you have to find these gaff trees. They're not standing there artificially. It is a nursery. It's irrigated, but it takes a long time to prepare them to move. So you can see how it's a whole process. It took weeks for each tree. It's very delicate and a complicated process. We managed to do it. There's only a loss of 5% of the trees. So this is also a success in itself. And similar to the picture you saw at the beginning where we are planting the trees in a model, I went there and we and my colleagues went there, and there is a number of every tree, and we marked them with an F because forest, it belongs to us. And here you can see some of them planted on the side. So we actually went physically in the desert nursery and selected them before they were planted in the actual project. And this is, for me, I call this is like a dessert thing to do. It's something I love deeply in my heart. It's really amazing to be giving an opportunity to work like that. Another thing that is interesting is that what you see here is something called seal plan. There's no soil in UAE, so we had to do something for the soil, because otherwise we just lost all the water we used for irrigation. So we have made additives to the sand, and then we have used special sand from inin, that is a nearby city to Abu Dhabi, where this park is located, that has a rich character of some nutrients. So all in all, we had to mix that with the highest technology of irrigation. So it's just to say that Sometimes you can just take a tree and plant it in the soil, and Mother Nature will take care of the rest. Here you really had to bring a lot of knowledge before you could start to do something that we thought was the quality we wanted. But we succeeded. We told the client that, hey, let's not excavate more than needed. So let's build on the topography as part of the spatial concept. Let's add the programs that you want, and then we want to deal with the forest. And then, of course, the materials. Let's consider the microclimate, as you call it. We can actually lower the temperature, so it's a nice place to be in the city. So this is the plan. Here you can see how it looks like. We have actually designed it for nighttime as well. It's currently opening also in nights. I haven't personally seen it yet. I can't wait. And here you can see some pictures of how you are welcomed. There's no lawns in this park. It's one of the first parks where there's no lawns. It's really unique in that sense. You can see an aerial picture here. There is visible areas with sand. So all the high levels of the side is where trees just stand, sometimes in bare sand, because we need to limit the amount of irrigation demands. And sorry for the bad quality here, but there is a forest track in the park where you can walk in the middle of nature. And this is something that citizens of Abu Dhabi normally don't explore. And the kids, I just saw some movies, are just running around playing in nature, just like we dreamt of. And of course, all the sports activities. So this is an example of celebration of biodiversity, of ecosystem services, but also just city nature or sense of belonging in dense cities. And of course, it's not always that we can just be giving a flat piece of land and then do a park there. Sometimes it's mixed with building programs, building demands. So we constantly also work with that element. Now you can see in this picture that the system between buildings and what you can call landscape or urban nature. And we've done that in so many projects. I think this is one of the most well-known one, the SEB project in Copenhagen, where we play with stormwater. We play to bring mist and atmosphere, so you forget that you are in a very trafficked, very noisy area. But again, it's just a roof. It's a roof between two buildings, but it doesn't feel like it. It's something where you can't really separate building and landscape from each other. And that is the level that we would like to work on. In Paris, we are currently doing a project where we are also designing the facades because we are cleaning the air. So this is another level of the build or the grown, or you can also say the technology and the nature power, because this is actually filters that brings the polluted air into the root systems with a technology, just a ventilator. And by doing that, they eat the pollution, release oxygen, and there is nothing left over than just happy people and healthy people. So you can see here how we constantly work with that level of knowledge and design and integrating that. And sometimes it's just in pure urban spaces, sometimes it's together with architects. This one is just, I just need to mention that there's a tea plantation here on top of this project in Paris. It's an international competition we won, where tea is the only plant that doesn't have an intake of the heavy pollutions in the air pollution. So it's just a cool feature. And before I end, I have only 2 projects here I would like to share. One of them is the also well-known one we did with our very good friends from Copenhagen, BIG. It's the ski slope in Copenhagen on top of the waste-to-energy facility. So this is also an example of nature is everywhere now. It's on top of buildings. It's on top of a waste-to-energy facility. It's sometimes on top of malls and so on. So here, BIG made won the competition with the idea. So we were kindly asked to contribute for this park, all the living system that is on the hill. So this trekking route, this urban park that is also imitating a mountain, was something we had to investigate. We hadn't designed any mountains before. So the first thing we did was to study how do people actually experience, what is the spatial experience on a mountain. And here you can see how we investigated the body when you go up the hill or down the hill, how the steepness influence your perspective and your interpretation and understanding of the space that you are exploring. And we use that in the design, and that is why there is a certain journey implemented in the design of the paths. And here you can see when you climb up, your perspective become very small and limited, and sometimes it opens up when you go down, because then you have the overview. And that's kind of intriguing, and it's as amazing to go up as it is to go down. So that thing about mountains is quite intriguing, and also the fact that BID managed to pull this through. So we started to study mountains. We started to study Humboldt's very famous drawings about the different habitats, what happened. But this mountain hill is only 80 meters tall, so there's not really any different climates on it, but it's a challenging climate. It's challenging to plant trees there, so of course we had to go through a lot of technical research to solve it. But the other case was we wanted to do some nature contribution. The problem is just that this is where the waste to energy facility is located, so there was no landscape quality in terms of nature biodiversity that we could actually adapt to. So we had to flip it, and what we did was then we have to bring biodiversity to the surrounding. So it's kind of a corridor to make plantings that the birds like. So they will actually eat some of the small plants and then bring seeds to the surrounding area. So that was the idea, that we have to catalyze a biodiversity corridor through this waste to energy facility. And this bird here is a special bird that likes to live on hills and high areas in nature itself. And it's actually landed on our hill. I think it knows it's not a real hill, but it still appreciates the hill. It still likes it there. And it stays there. So when I received this picture from one of my colleagues, I felt so happy, because this is a proof that new nature is valuable. So lastly here, to sum up this presentation, what I have been trying to express is that we believe that a livable city, a livable future, needs a balance with nature. We don't think this picture you see here is the key to the future of cities. Something got lost. We lose ourselves if it continues like that. We need to understand that often nature and cities are detached from each other. We need to merge them, because there's two things that we achieve. On the left side, you achieve all the things that I explained before, which is the utility values. On the other side, the right side, you see the amenity values, the sense of belonging, the community, the pride, the history, something you remember from your childhood. This is something you cannot measure, but you can feel it. On the other hand, the left side, you can measure them. We can clean the air. We can, remove all the stormwater problems. So both elements are equally important. And to sum that up, this is the last project. It's called Bryggervangen in Danish. It's a whole neighborhood that is a resilient neighborhood where there was a lot of issues with flooding. So we won a competition to design and solve that flooding issue, but also to bring a new identity. And that new identity is brought in by city nature. This is how it looks. It's very sustainable. It's very technical. It's solving a lot of flooding issues, but it's definitely also something else. It's a new identity. It's a new sense of belonging. It's a new urban environment for the people that live there. This is how it looked before. So of course, it's logic that we change the character very strongly. But to be able to reach this transformation, it takes a lot of collaboration. It takes a lot of respect of process. It takes a lot of courage, but also a lot of it also makes you feel humble and you need to be able to listen. And so this process was long, and of course it took a lot of meetings, but in the end everybody won. Everybody is very proud of that. And this is a picture from that roundabout that is now turned into one of the greenest, nicest areas, well, at least I think so, in Copenhagen. And it's all made for climate adaptation. It's all made for heavy storm. You can see here, there's so many new trees. We reduced the asphalt, the whole new mobility system. So again, it's complex. It needs a lot of competences, and it needs to respect the process, the development, the communication, the care, what you can see here, but also the future ambassadors. We are not in this area any longer. Now it's the people that live there that need to take care of it. Now it's the municipality that maintains it. And they are doing that with the same base of values as we started with, because it's been a shared journey throughout the whole process. And this is something that happens. You know, all the small businesses started to grow. People are just sitting, hanging out in the middle of a former roundabout. And this picture is maybe one of them I'm most proud of. This is Instagram pictures. I didn't made it up. It's actually young people, instead of posting their new Nike shoes or a party with a lot of booze, and which is fine. I love that as well. They are now posting city nature. They are now posting insects. They are posting the change of nature, the daily change. They're posting the small businesses that came after the project. But this is the future. This is the same effort that why we are having this lecture today. This is the future young generations who need to take this approach. They are the ones who can secure a more livable future. And all these elements, again, the complexity and why we are interdisciplinary, all the way down to this grill that is made. So in the winter time, because here it snows, we add salt to the sidewalk. We need to invent a new type of irrigation system. We need to order a truckload of pine seeds and shovel them in around the pine trees, because the pH value in the soil was not perfect enough for this habitat. But all in all, it brings this unique character. All in all, it's a very aesthetical feeling. It's a very unique experience in the urban realm. And this is why we call it city nature. And that is what we believe is a key answer to the future of cities. And to sum this up, I would like you to see a little movie that we made about this project. And then thank you all for listening.
Bu ilham verici sunum için Rasmus Astrup'a çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve dilerseniz soru cevap kısmımıza geçiyoruz. Dear Rasmus, hello. Hello again. Thank you so much for that very inspiring presentation. It was mind-blowing, and I love your concept of city nature, and that we need to heal the city and then we can heal people. It was very inspiring. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience has a lot of questions for you. Should we get right to it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, perfect. So our first question is actually from a very prominent architect of Turkey, Dr. Deniz Aslan, and it goes like this. Settings of your works range from mainly Northern Europe to Abu Dhabi and to China. What are your experiences, comparisons regarding designing in such different morphologies, contexts and climates? Moreover, in which ways do you incorporate the rigid calmness of the Northern European design culture with the noise and tension of rather opposing contexts and cultures?
Thank you for that question. I think the word you said that matters the most is climate. You can say that in SLA, we call it SLA DNA. So we have a shared value system that we work with here. We have some things we believe that needs to be achieved. We have what we call nature-based design approach. So those values are brought anywhere we go in the world. But of course, the climate differentiates from the location we work. So nature itself or the climate always influence the projects. So they never look the same. And of course, there is also a level of culture, as I could hear from the question. And that influences as well how people use it. Right now, we are working on a project in India, and the behavior of people in the public realm is quite different from the one in Copenhagen, where I'm sitting right now. But I still think the values we add to the projects are the same. We still want to create livability. We want people to engage with each other in the urban realm. We want to support the biodiversity crisis. So the values are the same, but the projects look different. And then as another answer to that question, I would say it's also a mega great inspiration that things are so different in the world. I love that. It brings me energy.
Yeah, I felt that when you talked about, I think it was Al Fay in Abu Dhabi, which was apparently a very challenging project, but you really, you were very excited talking about it. So I'm sure it was a very, very exciting project. We actually have a second question by Mr. Aslan, which is from the design of an exhibition to the form of a bridge. From your discourse to the way you present your design, many aspects of your work point to a cinematographic approach. I believe you approach your framing in a manner that it presents a dynamic scene instead of a stunted fragment. If so, could you elaborate?
Yes, I think if I could pick one word for that one again, dynamic is the key. I think the dynamic scene is nature itself. Nature is a play. Nature is a scenery. It's just very slow. Sometimes it takes 5 million years to shape the surface of a stone that used to be a mountain. Sometimes it takes a nanosecond for dust to disappear, or the sun to appear, or the sky, or the clouds. So it goes in very different speeds or very different dynamics in nature. Some of them are so slow that you don't even recognize them with your eye. But I think that the dynamics are so interesting. We love to work with those dynamics, and we love the fact, even though it's scenographic, I wouldn't say it's completely, we cannot control them. I think that's very interesting, that the light that I'm sitting in right now in this studio, this artificial light, it's super dumb. It's very unhealthy. It's always the same, but the light in nature is so varied. Sometimes when it's clouded, shadows disappear, the spatial experience varies. So the scenery or the dynamic scenery is nature is fundamentally uncontrollable, and we find that super inspiring.
Definitely. Thank you for that answer, and thank you, Deniz Aslan, for these two very inspiring questions. And our next question is by Enise Burcu Derinboğaz. How do you see the future of the landscape architecture profession, considering its roots in garden design and its current position actively engaged in planning today? What is the next step?
I think the next step is to accept and understand the complexity of the crisis many cities are suffering right now. Of course, we are all talking about this pandemic, and I think the presentation of Plastique Fantastique was super cool, by the way. And I think the whole their approach, what they brought to the scene was this idea: what does it influence when we act socially in this spatial limitation? So that is one subject, the spatial, the social interactions. I think they really nailed that thought-provoking. It was just super great to see that, by the way. But I think another thing that we need to understand is that when this pandemic is over, there are still a lot of other problems. There's climate change, there is biodiversity crisis, there is still a social equity that needs to be solved. And I think the role today for landscape architects, like we are dealing with here in our office, is much more than just to use a classical pen and to sketch on some paper. We have a lot of other roles in this studio. You saw the project in Detroit, for instance. In that project, we are facilitators. We are facilitating conversations between people. We are guiding or facilitating problems into solutions without actually designing. So that is also why when we have these conversations, we are using our internal biologists, sociologists, and so on. But it could also be artists. It should be including firms like Plastique Fantastique. It should be all these kind of approaches. So I think the answer is that we need a lot of different competences to solve the cities today.
Definitely. Do you also have the feeling that during the pandemic, nature and being in nature has become much more important? We had that feeling here in Istanbul. We like to spend time in closed spaces. We go to the movies, we go to the mall, and most of the time we're not in nature. But with, not with social distancing and everything, the only place you can actually spend time right now, almost safely, is nature. Do you think that makes people appreciate it more? Do you think that will increase the demand on projects as those you implement in cities?
Definitely. And it's also something we have felt from clients around the world. So we've always thought that nature is the most safe place to be. They investigated 1 million kids in Denmark. They did a big research, and it reduces the chance to get mental diseases with 55% if you grow up near nature. I would like my kids to grow up near nature. I would not. I don't wish them to grow up in a concrete jungle. I think we socialize differently in nature. It's a very democratic and safe place to be. I think we need to breathe clean air. This pandemic is killing a lot of people, but actually there's more than 400,000, almost half a million people are dying of polluted air in Europe, just in Europe. Imagine the rest of the world. I mean, there are so many other things that needs to be solved with what we call city nature. So yes, the pandemic luckily also brought the attention to that, but we have to remember the holistic approach and solve all the elements when we work with it.
Definitely. We have another question from our audience. Certain theories related to landscape and planning propose to allow nature in the cities. What is your opinion regarding this? Do you really think it is possible to provide a balance between man and nature, or is it a big unknown from today's perspective?
I think it is. Nature is part of all of us, and here in the office we call it the built and the grown environment, and it's and the complementarity between them. You cannot have one without the other. So yes, we do believe that it's possible, and I don't think it's possible not to do it. I would rather answer like that. I don't think it's possible not to have city nature, not as a sustainable future. And one of the ways is also the way we did it in Paris, as I presented before, where we consider it three-dimensional. We have to think about facades, roofs, all surfaces in the city is something that has to be dealt with in a clever way. And of course, again, there's also a balance here. There's something about cars that we need to consider. Because they are taking up too much space, they're heating up the cities. Of course, they will hopefully soon be electric, but yes, I think we can manage to have nature. I think we need nature in cities. And again, it's city nature. It's not real nature.
Yeah, it is. I completely agree, by the way, and you're talking about it so beautifully, and you also in your presentation showed us how a big an impact city nature, even if it's just city nature, can have on the city and on our health and on the environment. We have one last question for you from our audience again. If there were any design principles supporting the idea that landscape architecture cannot create the real nature, but can create a new nature, what would these principles be?
Well, first of all, to respect the logic in the good question that you cannot create real nature. It is artificial. Secondly, to understand that you cannot completely control nature, that you need to somehow accept that you are starting a process when you deal with it. And then I think the best rule is always start with a question. What is the problem? What is the values you want to achieve? In this Paris project, again, we had no design when we went to the client. We won the competition. We just went there and said, listen, your location is the most polluted in Paris. We need to clean the air. And then the design grew out of that. But we didn't start with a shape or something. And it could also be you want to solve the best and most comfortable social interaction place. It can be sport. I mean, there's always programs, but I think always start with a question. A why is a very good rule for the design of the urban realm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, for answering our questions, for your work and the positive impact you have on the earth, nature and the environment and cities. Thank you so much, Rasmus.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Evet. Sorularınız için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Umarım siz de benim kadar keyif almışsınızdır. Bu akşam çok etkileyici, ilham verici konular dinledik. Konuşmacılarımıza bizimle oldukları için, sizlere de bizi izlediğiniz için ve değerli katkılarınız için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve kapanış yapmak için Arzu Hanım'ı tekrar sahneye davet ediyorum.
Tekrar merhaba.
Tekrar merhaba.
Ben de harika konuşmalar dinlediğimizi düşünüyorum. Çok ilham vericiydi, çok besleyiciydi. Özellikle pandemi döneminde hepimizin cevap aradığı sorulara sanki biraz konuşma fırsatı bulduk gibi de düşündüm. O yüzden çok keyifli bir akşam geçirdiğinizi düşünüyorum. Tüm konuşmacı dostlarımıza yeniden çok teşekkür ediyorum. Selma'ya bu güzel gecedeki moderasyonu için çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Teşekkür ederim.
Sonuna kadar bizi dinlediniz, bizimle birlikte oldunuz. Yarından itibaren de hepinizi tekrarlamak istiyorum ki sosyal medyalarımıza, web sitemize ve çok özel teşhir, hizmet, ürünleri bulabileceğiniz satış noktalarımıza bekliyoruz. Nippon Paint'in bundan sonraki macerasını birlikte yazalım istiyoruz. İyi ki geldiniz, iyi ki bizle birliktesiniz. İyi akşamlar diliyorum.
İyi akşamlar.